So thank you everyone for coming. I'm guessing it looks like a long day. Everyone's had the coffee and it hasn't helped. Clearly, we need to wake you up. So I'm Pranav Rao. I head Asset Management IT for Switzerland. I have Gayatri Pandurangan, who's AM Data Americas platform. We've been collaborating for more than a decade now. What I'm really good at is starting new ideas. What she's really good at is finishing them. So we're a good team. And Kayo is the expert in MarkLogic Data Hub service. So he's going to be presenting with us as well. So we do a lot of innovation work with MarkLogic. And this is the latest thing that we've done. So we're very excited to present this to you. So I want to start with, how many of you know the pop culture reference to the number 42? And it's not baseball. Okay. Anyone want to shout out what it is?
Life, universe, and everything.
Exactly. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So this is a book that it's one of my favorites. I grew up learning it. And I think I want to start with playing a clip from the movie. So I think that's very relevant because this is the ultimate data science's nightmare, right? Because it's not the answer that matters, it's the question that you ask. And the big problem in banking or any other industry really is, how do you know, in the space of what you don't know that you don't know, how do you do data sciences? It's very easy to find an answer to a question you already know, right? And this is pretty much what I find the biggest problem that we have today in data sciences. And I try to normally refrain from using data sciences, but that's what as a term because it means a lot of things to a lot of people. But I think it's also a generic term that kind of encompasses the whole problem, right? So if you, so this is what I think. I'm going to make some statements here, which you may or may not agree with, but I have some strong opinions about it. So I don't think we really care for data. No one really cares for data ever, right? Nor do we care for insights, because 42 was an insight, but there's nothing you can do with that, right? So what we really care is for transformative action. So if you cannot take a transformative action or a differentiating action as a business using an insight that you got out of data, it's all pointless, right? So I think any computer can find an answer. Given sufficient time and computing power, you can pretty much get through any amount of data. So that's the domain of data sciences, right? But if you engage in any data science project, you see it's like an iterative loop of never-ending questions. One answer leads to the next question, leads to the next answer, which leads to the next question. And at some point, you might converge on a problem, but it never is the end of it, right? So that, to me, is data sciences. And this is something I took off the web, but essentially, this is something that we get caught up so much in most industries, including banking, right? If you have, you have the computer science majors, you have the math and statistics majors, and you have financial experts or insurance experts, all coming together to form that cross-discipline of data sciences. Now, depending on where your data science program starts from, sometimes it starts from the IT side, and you get a whole flavor of it, one flavor. Sometimes it starts on the business side, you get another flavor. But if you want to put a whole organization together around it and really tackle data sciences for a bank or any other institution, this is a problem because if you have traditional IT, which sits outside of business, then how does IT become a key differentiator? Because while IT may or may not understand your data completely, right, it's really the business folks or the domain experts who actually really know their data. So this is a whole puzzle in itself, right? Now, we get a lot of, take the best example. If you were to build a machine learning algorithm to train it using historical trading data, you already have a problem. Because historically, all traders are male, and so the machine learning has a male bias automatically, right? Now, it may be okay for now, but if you want the benefit of a more diverse decision-making power, then you really have to unbias the male bias in the whole trading decision process. That is a huge problem to solve in itself. The other problem is also if you have regulation, how do you explain what a machine learning algorithm did to a regulator, right? So all I'm trying to say is that it's a huge space. And when we get, as a bank, we get a lot of people who apply from PhD programs, whether it's quantum physics or math or computer science majors. And it's very easy to assemble a data sciences team, but the value that you get out of it is so hard to kind of substantiate. That's the problem that we face, right? So but what are we really busy with as IT? This is the space that we're actually busy with. Forget data sciences. You first have to solve for data and data platforms, right? Before you can solve for data, you have to solve for the data platform. And these are just a whole bunch of topics that come up a lot in our space and would come up with most big companies if you're using MarkLogic, right? data centers, cloud, production, DR, high availability, networking. And if you have a large organization, a global organization, these are all departments in an organization sometimes. These are large global departments. Each one of these boxes can be that. And if you have one production issue where your query is slowing down, you have a call between all these departments, 20, 30 people sitting on the call for 20, 30, like, 5, 6 hours trying to nail the issue. And this is the space that we're actually busy with, right? It is extremely important. And it gets even more complicated when you have a global context. If you're trying to do this on a global scale between Asia, Pacific, Europe, and Americas, it's a whole other engineering feat to accomplish, right? And you have to solve for regional regulation. Regulation is very national and regional now, right? So that has to be solved for. You have audit policies, and data is everybody's hot topic, and everyone's looking at it, so you really have to comply with a whole bunch of stuff. So this whole space is such an important topic. We all agree with that, hopefully. And it is important, it is strategic, it is critical, but it's still a commodity function. No one cares. Don't pat yourself on the back for this, right? This is table space. This is what you better have, because none of this is going to guarantee profitability for your business. Well, maybe cost reductions and things like that. But if you're looking for a differentiating function, transformative action, changing the business model, what does a bank sell or not sell, or an insurance company sell or not sell? All of this just makes it available. This is just a platform on which you can do all of that. And a lot of the industry spends so much money, and the IT space dwells in this region. And it's a very important one, critical one, but you've got to get that it's still a commodity function. That's what we believe, right? Where we really want to be is maybe data sciences. Now, data sciences, I keep referring to it as an example of a differentiating function. It could be something else for you. It could be maybe customer experience could be a differentiating function. Maybe you want to spend in that. Or digitalization, however you define it. Right? That's the space where you want to be spending more and more money on, but it's very easy to get caught up in this space, as we all do. Like, I'm guilty of that as well. So we have teams now that have delivered massive projects in this space, and you've got to very quickly make it irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's not next year's success. We're done with it, right? So how do we kind of free up capital and focus and energy and talent to make way for this stuff? Because I think this is sort of where more and more IT organizations need to go as well. So that's the paradigm that we're facing. I mean, that's the problem space for us. And we do a lot of work with MarkLogic. And I think Data Hub Service is the answer to some of this stuff. So for that, I'm going to invite Kayo.
Thank you. So Credit Suisse is not unique in their pursuit to have differentiation in their business. Many other customers want to do that, and they want to do better data integration. The example here, they're doing better data integration for data sciences, but there are other use cases. But as we see all the time, they get stuck sometimes in the IT. Sometimes it takes too long to provision a server, and they cannot respond to the business. Okay, how do you solve this? Some customers move to the cloud. And you move to the cloud, you just move the problem to the cloud. The cloud vendors do not have a solution to help you do data integration. Think about the cloud vendors. They have different databases for documents, for graph, for relational, another platform for analytics, another platform for do ETL. So you just transfer the problem. Okay, you solved one, that it's faster, but you still didn't solve the data integration problem. And a side product of moving to the cloud, you end up spending more. It's very common to hear this from our customers that move to the cloud that are actually spending more money when they move to the cloud. Why? Most of these platforms are very hard to predict cost. They charge by IOPS. How can you predict how a query will have in terms of IOPS? It's super hard, so it's very easy to overspend there. So we heard this from most of our customers, and we decided to help them focus on what differentiates their business. The first step on that was to make the Data Hub part of our product offering, and we did that last year. We have built Data Hubs for customers along the last 5 years, and now it's part of our product offering. It's included in MarkLogic. And that helps you speed up how you integrate data. It's the same platform that will help you load data as is, and the same platform that will help you do the harmonization, the mastering, and use the same platform for analytics, which is the use case that I will be describing here, but as well for operational and even to other downstream applications. That was the first step. We have, as we saw this morning, a good number of customers already running the Data Hub in production, and we continue to have more and more customers getting into the Data Hub. But we had to help customers overcome the issue with the internal IT. They were still waiting too long to get a server or to get it configured. So we introduced the Data Hub service in late October, and the Data Hub service is the best way for you to run the Data Hub. In a question of minutes, you will have a production-grade Data Hub, which has a predictable low cost. So we also solved the problem of the predictability of the cost. So the same platform here, rather than a multitude of platforms that you have from cloud providers, and is a predictable cost. I will explain a little bit that. If you were to think, what is the Data Hub? Service is the combination of the Data Hub. So the Data Hub framework allows you to do fast data integration, allow you to keep track of all the governance that is needed. We are talking about a regulated industry here, banking, but applies to all businesses. All businesses are regulated these days. So we help with all the APIs and we keep track of governance. And everything that we do in MarkLogic, we focus a lot in security. So you get all the security out of the Data Hub platform and as a service. So you don't have to worry about how to deploy. You don't have to worry about how to scale and all that with a cost-effective way of using the service. And this is much more than the database as a service. It's the same platform out of the box. It's a multimodal solution. You can load documents, you can load graph, you can load relational, you can consume as relation, you can consume as graph, you can consume as documents. All the ETL tools is part of the solution. You don't need a separate solution. You don't have to worry about stitching things together. And better than all that together is that same security model. You apply the security model once to the data and applies to all interfaces. If it's your analytics tool, if it's an operational tool, we ensure that only the right people have access to the data. All built in, highly differentiated solution from what you see in the market. As I said, the fastest way for you to deploy the Data Hub is the Data Hub service. In minutes, you have everything taken care. You don't have to worry about, oh, who will manage the production environment? We will manage for you. What is the right hardware to use? We will choose the right hardware to run MarkLogic, which is the best that will get the best performance for you. And what about the cost? It's a predictable cost. I will show how the credits work that will allow you to have a budget-friendly solution, but at the same time, accommodate peaks in demand. And finally, reliable, everything is in high availability, everything is secure by default, and of course, it's built on MarkLogic, so everything is 100% ACID, which also differentiates from many other solutions out there. Once you deploy the hub, what we deploy is the solution at the bottom. So first, I want to highlight one aspect here. Every customer exists in its own virtual private cloud. That's very important for our customers because, as I said, almost all the industries are regulated. So this ensures that your data is never shared with another customer. So we chose this. It was not easy to do, but that's a way to guarantee that the data is not shared. Credit Suisse data only resides in their account, never shared. And when we provision this, we provision these different stacks, which are represented by the boxes here. So I have these three boxes at the top, the curation, the operational, and the analytical. This box auto-scale independently. This is not only a platform that you can do harmonization, mastering, operational, and analytical. You can do all at the same time, and they scale independently. So if you have a load, and at the same time you're doing transactions, we will add dynamically capacity to serve that demand. This is very unique in the market. Think about the alternative is to have a separate product, which means another data silo. Here, the same data shared across the nodes. We will cache all the data and ensure it auto-scales. And that's what we'll be talking about today, how this actually worked to benefit a harmonization job that they had here in the curation stack. Again, what do we do? We handle everything about the hardware. You don't have to worry about the hardware. So when we say, for instance, in the example that I'll show, that it costs $12 per hour, all the hardware is taken, it's covered. We do all the provisioning. We choose the best instances to run. And this is a serverless. You don't even need to understand what are the instances. You just consume, you just add data and consume through the endpoints. And everything that we do, it's highly available, highly secure. We monitor 24/7, so you don't even need to worry about how to monitor MarkLogic. We take care of that. And of course, we support everything. So let me talk a little bit about the business aspect. How this helps you have a predictable cost. So when you subscribe to the service, which is represented here in the screen that you will go and create a service. I have an example here that I'm creating a service. I'll read for you if you cannot. The capacity is 96. And below that, there are 4 pieces of information. One is the baseline. The baseline is 96. The burst is 1,152. That's the maximum capacity that we will provision if there is demand for that. The storage is how much this is good for. And the last piece is the cost. Again, $12 per hour. Once you create this, the cost is not going to change. So you know that's how much you're going to spend. But it's easy to do that in the data center. You can just buy hardware. You have, let's say, 10 nodes. It's predictable. But what if you have a spike in demand? Can you go beyond that? You cannot go. Here, it's predictable, but you can still go and provide more capacity because we have this concept of credits. In the data center, what happens if you're not using the servers? Waste. Here in the service, as exemplified here by these 3 lines, the green line is, I will call the money line. It's how much you're spending. And every time that you are not consuming what you subscribe to, you accumulate credits. So it's like when you're not using, you are accumulating. That's why the blue line, which is the credits, it's going up. So when you don't consume, you save. And later on, you can consume. So very different from what you can do in the data center. In the data center, typically you have to provision the servers, and that's it. So if you want to serve that peak in a traditional deployment, you have to size to the peak. Here, we can serve that peak, which is, in this example, about 2 times the baseline without spending any extra money. Everything was covered by the credits that were available. It's very common that businesses will have cycles like this. During the night, there's not much activity. Probably the data scientists are not running many queries during the night. Probably your customers are not using your systems during the night. So at night, you accumulate, and during the day, you can serve that, all within this predictable cost. The green line does not change. The only one that can change this is you. You want more capacity. You want to be faster. You move that. With that, I'll invite Gayatri to talk a little bit about our experience, and we'll talk about how Autoscale actually helped Credit Suisse in one of the use cases.
Hello. All right. Thank you, Kayo. Hey, everyone. Hope everybody's still awake and not sleepy. All right. So we first started by asking all organizations to think about why they should focus on differentiating factors and enhancing business value add. We then saw Kayo give a very comprehensive overview of Data Hub service and what it can offer. What we will see right now is what we did with Data Hub service and some of the observations. And perhaps some of it could apply to you in your world. Let me ask a question to this audience. What do you think is the most valuable entity in an organization? Data. Okay. Anyone else? It's the people. Because you could say it's the product, you could say it's the customers, you could say it's a strategy. But I think if you are able to take care of the people in your organization, I believe they automatically take care of the rest. You really have to start having your people focus on factors that really differentiate you from the rest of your market. But what have we seen? Research shows organizations, over 60% of the people in the organization are focusing on infrastructure management, they're focusing on platform engineering, and not necessarily on the factors that really enhance business outcome. So we decided to see, after hearing about Data Hub Service, we wanted to do a quick proof of concept to see what it can offer and whether it can probably address some of our key objectives. What did we observe? First of all, the setup and reliability. We took a very typical use case in a trading industry. It's about 2.5 gigs of data. We load about 40 gigs of data every day. So this is one use case that we do every day. It's a position and trade combination, and the end of it, we create like what we call position aggregates. That is actually further used for reporting and analytics. The entire setup of this POC was done in a matter of few days. In fact, the instance was set up in a few minutes, and including synthetic data that we created and the setup of our trading use case outside of our organization really took a few days. And it was secure, it was reliable, and that was really like a first promising result that we saw. This actually simplified our architecture in a big way. You really start focusing on just your business core functions. A lot of us spend a lot of effort in creating monitoring frameworks, in creating communication amongst the components within your entire infrastructure, whether your network is up and running, whether your OS is functional, you have heartbeat monitors, and you have a set of people just to monitor those monitoring services. So you really like simplify your architecture, and thereby, my most favorite topic, production support simplification. Because just like Pranav was saying, we actually have situations, most organizations have situations where there is like at least 7 or 8 different groups or departments within an organization specifically focusing on each individual function. And depending on the issue that you have, especially if it is a timeout, or things like your nodes are down, or for any unknown reason your production process did not run, you just don't know what the root cause is. You get all these people in a call, you spend like hours and hours, and end of day you do resolve it because that's what you need to have your traders and analysts like use your system. But have we differentiated or added any value to the business? The amount of time spent between all these departments is perhaps necessary, critical, but it didn't really like make a difference or change the bag, as we call it. Now I'm going to talk about a few factors. I know like Kayo had a whole bunch of different boxes that is actually taken care of by the Data Hub service, but I'm going to talk about a few things that are compelling and definitely like experienced by most of the organizations, irrespective of industry which you come from. Servicing of storage, servers and storage setup in the data centers. The data centers itself is a huge architecture because you need to make sure it is set up in 2 different locations so that they back each other up. You need to make sure your storage is rightly set up, and even if you're in a virtual private cloud or some kind of a hybrid cloud, all of these have to be factored in when you're building your applications, and then some of this could be very time consuming. The procurement and then the provisioning, because your organization could need like specific security patches, would require certain software to be installed. Imagine the amount of time in a project, you have to like factor in all those time-consuming activities to just begin your project and to even implement and before you roll out into production. So all of that can be largely reduced. Networking and OS. I'm sure like you might have acknowledged or experienced this. Getting something as like the root access to the Linux server could be a large time-consuming process. I see some of the technology people nodding there. It is a process. It takes time. It actually like becomes part of your production timeline right now when you give timelines to your stakeholders. So you really, that shouldn't be something that you should be worried about. You should be thinking about what can you do for your front office? What can you do for your operations team? How are you changing the strategy that they do for data governance? Rather, we spend a lot of time in these activities. Now, database administration. I actually call them, they're like salt in food. When they do exist, nobody knows that they exist. But when they don't exist or when they don't perform, then everybody knows that something is missing. They are so valuable in any organization because remember, everything is data and you obviously will have some kind of a data system. And if you don't have a database administrator team, that actually takes care of your system, then you really could be in large trouble. And what we see largely through all of this is the talent and the people. The amount of time you continue to invest in bringing them up to speed and continuously training them in platforms so that they are up to speed every time you do an upgrade, every time you change your infrastructure, every time you move or change your cloud provider. You now need like new talent. You need to train them. So all of that is largely reduced by using a data hub service like offering. Now, what did we actually observe in our proof of concept itself? I told you about a typical use case. It actually like runs through a process flow. Every night we get data. Again, like it goes through the data hub framework. It does ingestion, it does harmonization, curation, and then it produces the output that is further used for reporting. What we saw was currently it takes about 55 minutes every single day. And when we saw in the proof of concept, it actually took about 15 to 16 minutes. In fact, when we quadruple the data to 4 times, it still took about 36 minutes. It is one use case. I mean, it's not all the use cases that we have, but when we initially tested this, this was quite positive. What happened behind the scenes is even more interesting. I mean, I'm sure like Kayo might have shown this in the slide before, but this is actually the actual nodes that were started when our process was running. So when we started the process at 7:06, at this time, 7:18, you see that automatically the evaluator nodes started dynamically. Why? Because it saw that there was a need to enhance compute. We do a lot of calculations. We load a lot of reference data. We actually do a lot of lookups. We actually calculate prices or predictions and so on. So there is a lot of performance and calculations that go in before you actually make your data available for end users. So when in times of those, the evaluator nodes automatically started, and you'll actually see that the app server request rate also matched with the same time that the evaluator node started. And then it shut down dynamically or gracefully. Now you can certainly do this in your environment, but you need to actually manage that entire configuration, and you have to monitor like what's your volume increase, what's the performance that you need, and how should it actually work, and you need to actually enable and disable manually. In Data Hub service, we saw that we didn't have to do anything. All we did is we increased the data volume, and automatically we saw that the performance was tuned according to the need of the use case. Now, what does all of this mean to an organization? The most valuable resource in an organization, which is the people that work on commodity tasks. I mean, we spoke about database administration and how important they are. For a product like MarkLogic, I would say they're even more important because they don't just like restart and shut down your servers. They actually like set up forests. In our case, day one when we went live, we had to like set up tiering strategy. How much of data goes into tier 1? How much of data goes into tier 2? How much of data do you need to like, when do you have to do the shift? Is it based on sizing? Is it based on timeline? All these factors had to be considered when we build out applications, and the entire topology management is done in partnership with database administrators. Product LCM. This is an interesting topic. Lifecycle management, or LCM as we call it, is a process where technology teams often bring in vendor tools or products and embed into critical applications for the business. And then shamelessly every year or every other year, we go to them and say, oh, we need to do an upgrade. And it's fine. Obviously, you have to manage your software. You need to do the upgrade. But then imagine the amount of time that you spend in doing the actual upgrade, thereby deprioritizing something that you could have done otherwise. You actually sometimes keep projects behind, or you ask for additional investment, whether it is time or resources, just so that you can do the upgrade. And in most organizations, we don't have just production. We have dev, we have QA, we have UAT, we have production, and DR. That's 5 environments that you have to upgrade every time there is a change in a software. In Data Hub service, one of the things that we noted was we are using Data Hub framework. It was in version 2.0.6. It was automatically upgraded to 4.2, I think. And then we also didn't have to change anything in the code. But what is really nice about the Data Hub service is that obviously your upgrade is automatically taken care of. The only thing that you need to make sure is like your application is configured and it actually works well with the upgrade. You don't have to manage the actual process of installation and additional procurement. So what is the shift in focus? We really like start moving from data platform engineering to what I call data engineering. And this could mean different things for different people, but I'm just highlighting a few things that might be relevant. One is data management. Now, I'm not talking about generally like, setting up your data and then like, setting up some controls and levers to manage it. I'm talking about bringing in concepts like knowledge graphs, building out your taxonomies, building in ontologies to really understand your data, really understand what an entity is, how do you actually like combine all the different fields that are used by different departments. In a financial organization, it's typical to have like a risk organization. It's typical to have an IGM or investment guideline monitoring and a front office and a middle office. They all use same data, but they all have their own ways of calling data differently. Now you really have to start building your knowledge graph and metadata management to even make sense and combine all those different data and make sure that it means something to them. Smart data mastering. Actually, there is a session, I think, going right now in parallel where MarkLogic kind of introduced that concept of smart data mastering. To me, it's the most critical aspect of data management because any deep topics of AI, machine learning, or the whole body of data sciences is only as good as the data that is underlying all of it. Because how good is your prediction if it is not reliable? How do you make sure that your data is actually accurate and complete and reliable? You start using the same concepts of machine learning and AI into your data mastering or data management techniques where you identify, oh, this is a duplicate. Oh, this is not like really like accurate. Oh, there is a missing field here. We actually build a lot of controls, a lot of reports around it just to manage that quality. Imagine if we are able to focus on it and start building out routines to take care of it automatically so you don't have to build yet another report to manage your data. DevOps. We all work in some form of DevOps, or at least people are largely talking about it. You really start integrating DevOps into your data projects. Agility. Now, all of it is actually like gives us a very agile, flexible, highly configurable based environment. Whenever there are new use cases, whenever there are alternate data sources that you want to bring into your organization, you really like have an environment that is already ready. You don't need to think about, oh, should I change my forest size? Should I bring in new hardware? Should I have to hire new people to manage the database now because it's getting larger? You don't really need to worry about all of that. You really have a flexible environment that actually helps you in the entire business of data engineering. Moving further, you move from data platform engineering into the business of delivering or start building out like actionable insights. Now, as we saw in the video, most of the time we don't even know what's the question to ask. And imagine the IT organization and the business organization. I mean, Gary spoke about this in the keynote as well. They usually are not necessarily on the same page when it comes to understanding the data. You really need to create like new partnerships and new groups, working groups where they really like partner and they are able to make sense of data and they start talking about, okay, what are the insights that we could be generating? What is something that is the need of the hour? How would I actually address some of the key problems rather than doing all of this? So the shift in focus should really be towards more of those differentiating functions. In conclusion, I would just say this. Unless you're a database company, you should really be focusing on these transformative and insightful action-oriented tasks rather than your business of managing data, and even less effort on managing a database. And as database, the overall, like as a technology company, if you're actually going to continue to focus on these commodity functions, it is really going to keep you busy, keep you working on critical projects, but you're not necessarily like making a difference out there. You're not actually necessarily increasing market share for your business partners. On a lighter note, I'm sure many of you might have seen this movie called Grinch. At least I have, because I have 9-year-old twins who love this movie. So there is a particular scene that I really like, which I think was relative to this topic. There is a scene where Grinch has his assistant, Fred, who wants to make a cup of coffee. He goes into the kitchen one morning, and he stumbles upon every little thing in the kitchen. And then he finally figures out there is this giant coffee machine, which he doesn't know how to operate. And then he even stands on it and then makes the coffee. Now, unaware of all of this, he's serving Grinch the cup of coffee. And Grinch takes a sip and he says, "Now that's a fabulous cup of coffee." And Fred smiles. In a lot of ways, don't you think your stakeholders are like Grinch? They really don't care for the process or the mess that you have created in your kitchen. They really want their delicious cup of coffee served to them every single day. So if there is something that I want the audience to take away from this or think about, it is the answer to the question, like how much of your effort to the critical key projects that all of us are working on is on the commodity functions, focusing more on that versus the differentiating functions in your own industry. Thank you. So we have some time for questions.
Did you meet resistance from compliance, security, in heading in this direction, assuming you're live in production with this?
No, we are not live in production.
Okay.
So this is a POC that we did.
Okay.
So we are yet to go on that journey of getting the right approvals.
But we do anticipate that. But that's part and parcel of the game, right? So.
You talked about security. What about encryption and bring your own key, hold your own key? How are you guys dealing with that? Are you dealing with that?
Yeah, that's one of the aspects to help them overcome those barriers and those internal controls, is to help them bring their own keys so that they can have more assurance that they are the only ones that can manage their data in terms of securing their data. We already have external key management, is already built into the service, but we were saying that they manage the master key. So we'll work with them for them to provide the master key.
There's a question there?
Thank you. Some of your presentation and other things I've seen today is the ability to reduce the workload on your IT folks, because a lot of it is done automatically. Do you anticipate, therefore, shifting them to focus on bringing in new or other capabilities, or do you see this as a way to reduce kind of that overhead and put your resources into other part of your business?
I think it's going to be a bit of both. Again, depending on the industry that you come from, all we are saying is, like, think about how much effort as an organization we are spending. And it's not just sometimes pure IT, right? It's all these support organizations too. So if you're able to get to a state where you completely are able to, automate everything, that's great. But I think it's a long road ahead. So I think the first step is to really start reducing the effort that we spend on those and really start focusing on key business differentiators. So it's a journey.
As you work to curate your data, ingest it, and then do that mastering, was it fairly apparent what your key entities were and how you needed to structure your data, or did you kind of have to feel your way through that?
It's a good question, because MarkLogic by itself is a schema-less database, right? You don't necessarily have to model, I should say model-less, data model-less database. So you don't need to understand and map every single entity and every single attribute. Usually we start with what the use case is, like what we need, and then you map only what you need. So that's the whole advantage of Data Hub framework, right? You stage everything in your staging area, and then you map what is required, what is known to you right now, and you spend only effort on that. Obviously, you need to understand your data, otherwise you won't know what to retrieve from your database. So but you largely eliminate the time that you spend like to, model like 1,000 attributes or entities when you don't even understand some of the data that you have. So in our case, as I said, our typical use case was, your traditional trades and positions, which we obviously understand and know. And we actually like load it on a daily basis and generate some aggregates. So that's what we use for this POC.
But we do kind of run into different cultures with that. So in the projects that we've executed, we've had the benefit of an agile data modeling thing. So you only model what you know today and leave the rest for later. And people interpret that two ways. Oh, this project went really well. But the next project is like you did nothing, right? So it's like a dual-edged problem. It's like you built no data models from the and you spent all this money, right? So that's where we are today. And we have other groups where they say, can you give us your data? And we're like, well, which data? There's like, I don't know, just give us everything, right? So, and we completely disagree with that, which means you really don't know what you want, and you don't even know what your data is supposed to do, right? So we like to discourage those kind of use cases because here in MarkLogic, it's not, we deliberately don't say data hub, we don't say data lakes and data swamps and all of that stuff. We harmonize what we know today and we use that. We're taking care of that problem today. And what you don't know, don't do anything with it yet, right? So there's multiple cultures that we kind of feed into over there, so.
Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you to our speakers, and thank you for coming to the session. See you tonight at Spin.